Welcome to Please Me, the award-winning bilingual sexuality podcast bringing you bold conversations and big lit energy. As a female host in a male-dominated industry, I'm thrilled to announce that Please Me is the #1 ranked sexuality podcast in the USA and worldwide, covering topics on sexual health, intimacy, and sexual empowerment. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sex education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap, one empowering conversation at a time. I'm excited to welcome Josh Davis to the podcast today. Josh specializes in LGBTQ+ mental health, helping gay men navigate shame, abandonment, identity, and emotional healing. Have you ever considered the mental health impact of living as part of a societal minority? In this episode, we explore LGBTQ+ mental health, self-acceptance, trauma, resilience, and how allies can better support the community. Listen in as Josh shares powerful insights on healing, connection, and why love is love. I'm happy to share that I've been nominated for a 2026 ASN Award for Best Educator. This year is a one-time vote, so I would truly appreciate your support. The link is in the show notes, and thank you for your vote. If you're ready to take your pleasure and sexual health seriously, explore the Sexual Longevity Protocol, a self-paced course designed to support you long-term. And if you want to start gently, download the 30-day self-pleasure and body reconnection practices, a free daily guide to help you reconnect with your body and build pleasure, one day at a time. Support the show by leaving a review and following the podcast wherever you listen. Join me on Patreon for $9 a month for ad-free episodes, early releases, and exclusive content, or subscribe to my paid Substack newsletter for deeper insights and updates. You can also join the Please Me Health Collective on SDC.com using code PLEASEME for a free trial and access to my free monthly webinars. Follow me on Instagram at PleaseMe by Eve Creations for more. Please Me is for mature audiences, so sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
If you're hating your body, you're probably not going to allow it to be that antenna that you need it to be to gather information. How am I feeling? How am I doing? Do I have a gut feeling about this? And that really helps us navigate life. It kind of goes back to that dissociation piece that we talked about before. So if you're dissociated from your body, you're going to be missing information.
Ladies, let's get personal for a minute. What does your vaginal health routine look like? Because as we mature, our intimate self-care needs an upgrade. If hormone shifts have you feeling dry, less sensitive, or just not quite like yourself, I've got a simple 3-step protocol I'm loving. Every morning I use my lady pump to increase blood flow and wake up the lady bits. And yes, it comes with 3 attachments for all the sensations. Then I apply Shamelessly Aroused by Shameless Care, formulated with sildenafil, the active ingredient used in Viagra, to support stronger arousal, better lubrication, and more responsive orgasms. Pair that with a daily self-love ritual, and you've got a powerful daytime combo. At night, I use Parlogame's estrogen and progesterone creams to support healthy hormone levels and resilient vaginal tissue. Fewer oops moments when I sneeze, and way more confidence when intimacy calls. Dryness, decreased sensitivity, frequent UTIs, incontinence, low blood flow? These 3 upgrades can be a total game changer, because intimate health isn't indulgent. It's essential. And trust me, you'll feel the difference. Hello, and welcome to Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. Today, I am so excited to welcome Josh Davis to the show. He and I met at an LGBTQ+ networking event, and we just had the best night chatting with each other, and I did not leave his side the whole night, and I welcomed him onto the show. Welcome to Please Me. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Eve. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so glad we met. I love your energy. I could talk to you for hours, honestly.
I agree. It was really fun. And we had a lot of things in common, which I really always love meeting people that have things in common with me. And I wanted to just ask you specifically, what is it that you specifically do? And so we can start the conversation from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I describe myself as a relationship therapist. So I work with relational dynamics and with relational trauma. So I see individuals and couples, but really I target towards gay men. So I really will talk about and market towards working with gay men in their relationships. And I really help people Thank you. And I really help people navigate shame.
Okay. So we're going to jump into shame in a minute, but I want to go over a couple of questions that you had before,
Mhm.
um, because I think it sort of sets the stage for the shame conversation, right? And so you talk about how people often feel like in relationships, it's really like one of the most important issues is communication, right? Why do you say that they're actually about protection shaped by past relationships? So instead of it being about communication per se, it's about your past relationships. Let's jump into that first.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is what makes relationships so complicated is that we're bringing on and bringing in all of our like past relational history. And that can be with romantic relationships, and that can also be with like how we were brought up and the relationships with our family and our parents. And so really I think that our we're bringing all of those things into our relationship. So we have to kind of look back at how we started to relate to ourselves and other people, what maybe survival strategies we learned to navigate our early environment if we had some relationship trauma, or if we had a really li- uh, a really uh, not the best environment to grow up in, because we're going to bring those strategies into our current relationship. So communication skills are great, happy that people like will promote them and talk about them, but I think they only go so far. They're somewhat of band-aids to, I think, much deeper problems, which is really those survival strategies. And typically what I've noticed and what I've observed is that um, usually we'll partner up with people who will support our survival strategies. So if I am a really big attuner and I learned that I have to scan and attune to my environment and meet other people's needs, I usually will get with someone who is more of what I call a trust survival style, that is suspicious and will have to kind of has had to learn on their lean on their own like gumption, um, and like mistrust of others to get through the world. And usually those are a coupling. So there's a lot of things that we will look at in relationship dynamics that keep those alive. But usually when people come to me, something has shifted and changed. One person in a dynamic has either like started going therapy, or they're doing something different, or they realize they want something else for themselves, and then the dynamic shifts and change and it becomes unbalanced. So that's usually what causes like the dysfunction, and people are looking for something different.
So you talk about protective strategies, right? And so, if you've gone through any trauma, and most everyone has gone through some kind of trauma, right? But um, just in my own personal case, I come from a history of sexual abuse, right? And so, yes, there are a lot of protective mechanisms that help me get through that, right? And so I can see how that follows you unless you work on those things. And you talk about protective patterns, right? And things that show up around intimacy and sex. Can you talk more specifically about what that looks like in a relationship?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to like I was talking about before, where if I learned that I need to make myself small,
Hmm.
if I need to preserve kind of myself, I'm not going to ask for things that I want in a relationship around sex, or I'm not going to be able to like allow myself to access my own desires and my own wants, because I've probably learned that is threatening. So I don't want to, communicate that to my partner. Or sometimes people like learn that they need to push, and that like push of like asking and making things happen is not a sexy way of like initiating sex. So usually they'll like kind of bulldoze, and the other person will like retreat and like fall away, and they're like, what, like it doesn't create an environment for healthy connection and healthy communication. And that's really the part of like what I love to do and talk to people about, is like, as a relational therapist, I really think of things as a system, and I'm a big nature nerd. So I think of everything kind of living in an ecosystem. And so one of the things that we can do is that we can shift a part of that ecosystem, which is going to impact the rest of the system. Right. So that's what happens when like one person starts to change, then like the whole system's like, whoa, what are we doing? Why do we have to adjust? And really what we want is homeostasis. And this is where sometimes people will start going to extremes, and will go to one extreme to the other, to look for what we are, wanting, or because usually that's a fear. So those extremes can also keep us stuck. And I see those kind of extremes where it doesn't create a healthy environment for love, connection, intimacy. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, it does. But I would love to know what you mean by extremes. Like, what extremes do you see? Like, give us a couple of examples so that I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Thank you. Like in those extremes of whether it's shutting down or being activated, right? So that's one extreme that usually, like, people start going more and more and more. And once they start kind of going down that street of like the extremes, they just get more and more extreme. So I see that, like, shut down, that fear of asking for things. There can be mistrust, vulnerability also, of like, if I have to if I've learned that vulnerability and you're going to break my heart, if I show you like my true authentic self, that also can build a mistrust, or it, once again, doesn't go back, it goes back to not creating a healthy environment for like the relationship.
Yes. Okay. So I'm seeing what you mean by extreme. So, and we're talking about really anything, right? But like, since we're talking about sex, let's just like so you're saying either people will like shut down, or they'll be a little bit pushy on the other end. Would that be like the two sides of the extreme?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. And so what you're saying is that those things will get worse over time if not addressed.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
extremes will get it. Okay, gotcha. All right, I understand now. So let's talk specifically about the gay community and gay men specifically, right? And let's talk about shame, because I know that gay men experience shame in a different way than like the general population, right? And I would love for you to like sort of dive into those differences and how you see that playing out in the therapy that you provide.
Yeah, I really love talking about shame. I'm actually really passionate, which is kind of weird. And I see shame in a different way than most therapists will see it. So if it's okay if we zoom out a little bit, because I want to talk about shame as, like, I see it as a coping mechanism versus an emotion. And yes, I think there is a part of an emotionality to it where it's healthy, where we will feel embarrassment. I see guilt and shame on the same like lines of about correction, right? So if we have done something wrong, if we have overstepped our, a value of ours or a taboo in the environment, that's when we get those emotions. They're just cues that we need to make a correction. So that's the emotionality of it. But really, this toxic shame is a coping mechanism where we have to go back to how we've adapted to our survival, to our environment growing up. And usually we will have some sense of healthy protest, this aliveness that allows us access to ask for what we want, to advocate for ourselves, to find our identity, to be true and secure in who we are. And usually, if those needs are not met, so if a child is crying and crying, crying, and no one kind of attunes to them, what is the option that that kid knows what to do? They shut down. They turn it inward. That anger turns inward, which is where this like toxic shame comes into play. And I think for so many gay men, they've learned that their desires are not appropriate, or it's dangerous to love who you love. They've get all these implicit or explicit messages from their environment that you're not natural, which is not true. There's a lot of homosexuality in nature, and that society does not accept you. So a lot of gay men struggle with a lot of shame and this shutdown of, if the world will not accept me, the world's not, you know, doesn't want me to be who I want to be. And I think this is a lot for the LGBTQ community, but for gay men, I see this a lot. So they turn inward, and vulnerability becomes a threat. Their authenticity becomes a threat, and they learn how to navigate in a way that is either from a place of shutdown, where it's the shame of like, I'm not going to be forthcoming, I'm going to hide who I am. And that kind of carries on that theme. It can get better, but the theme kind of stays there for the rest of their life. Or it's this like opposite, they kind of what I call a shame and pride balance, where it's like, if I'm shameful of who I am, then I'm going to like counterbalance with this like boastful pride, which is not like a healthy sense of like self. It's more of this like, I'm going to show you who I am.
Okay.
And so that can become like very defensive. So I see like people kind of going into these two extremes where it's like shut down, or it is this like, I have to like protect myself and be really kind of like on guard all the time and defensive to protect myself. So that's how I see shame playing out with gay men.
Yes. And also, not being societally, recognized or accepted in a lot of ways makes you shut down and also edit yourself, right, in your life and play smaller and try to sort of be, more societally acceptable, right? And women experience this as well just by being a woman. Of course, gay women also experience this, but we're talking specifically about gay men today. How does that impact how they show up in adult relationships? Because obviously, this is something, and most gay men or gay women also will be struggling with the fact that they are gay from the time that they're very, very young, right? And so it really is something that follows them throughout their whole life. And unless you're working on these things as you go, then you'll start to see these extremes that you're talking about, right? So, how does this show up in a relationship?
Yeah. And I think this is why so many gay men struggle with relationships. And I hear from a lot of my younger guys that are trying to like date, where people will get like close to them and they'll like kind of start like having like heartfelt feelings rather than just like the sexual side. And then people will ghost them, people will disappear. Because what happens with complex trauma and relational trauma is that ultimately like our greatest longing becomes our greatest fear. So we want like love and connection, but then we push away from it, or we want independence and freedom, and we'll stay in like in codependent relationships. So really what comes up is this like fear of like ultimately what I want seems threatening. So it can be very hard, whether you're dating or if you're in an intimate relationship. Sometimes people will cope with secrecy. They won't be able to share with things. And this is where I think a lot of sometimes gay men will cheat on their partner because they don't feel like they can be forthcoming. They can't share their heartfelt feelings, or they can't say like, hey, like this is bothering me, or hey, like this is what I actually want in a relationship. They're trying to attune to their partner and be like, am I acceptable? And I think there's this kind of pattern that I see where gay men, and this is kind of another kind of outcome of shame, is that rather than being vulnerable humans, they start objectifying
Okay.
themselves or other people. So it's safer to become somewhat of an object and to be loved for your body or what you can do, or other reasons, versus like, hey, this is me, this is my sitting in my authenticity and being vulnerable.
I love that explanation. And let's get into sex a little bit, right? And
Mhm.
let's talk about sexual freedom. What's the difference between how you see gay men expressing their sexual freedom, or using it as a way to cope and seek validation? So there's obviously, a very fine line. However, these are one is a healthy expression and then the other one is unhealthy. Can we just jump into that?
Yep, absolutely. I see everything being able to be a vessel for connection or disconnection. So that whether that's substances or sex or binging TV, whatever it is. And sex is one of those things where, especially because for gay men, like that is like what obviously like communicates like, hey, I'm gay, I'm different. So if you are, and I think that's really what sexual freedom is being able to be present in your body, being connected to your heart's desires, what you want for yourself, being able to stand up for yourself, to have that like life force, if you will, like flow through you, because that's really what gives us energy to be like turned on and to like be creative, and like there's that flow to life, and like sex, hopefully for people, you're tapped into that, you're present in your body, you're able to, connect with other people, or your partner, and have this really beautiful experience. When you are using it to cope, you're dissociated from yourself, you're disconnected. It's a way of like running, escaping. It's a way of either like getting status, or being able just to kind of run away from what is happening. So I think with sexual liberation and sexual freedom, it's really being able to like navigate through that shame, and not be shamed for, or not shaming yourself for who you are, what you like, and being able just to really live in that desire, and like allowing yourself to experience pleasure.
I love that. And you just talked about dissociation. And I think that that is a very common coping mechanism that people use to sort of, I know that for me, like when I think about dissociation, I think about, um, you know, back when I was getting abused, right? I remember like kind of being outside. It's like an out of body experience, right? Where I'm like suddenly like counting all the corners in the bedroom, to like not be present in my body, or whatever that may be for each person. Like for me, it was like always counting everything around the room and like trying to get out of my body so that I was protecting myself, right? And so, can we talk a little bit about what exactly dissociation is and how it plays out in relationships and specifically in sex? Because you mentioned that a lot of people will dissociate during sex and use it sort of as a coping mechanism instead of really being, um, in their bodies. And I think that understanding this is so important if you have gone through trauma.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing. I know that's not easy to talk about. So I just really appreciate your vulnerability, and just being able to share. Um, and dissociation is a blessing and a curse, right? Like in those moments where that is your only option, it is a beautiful way of disconnecting, and it actually preserves yourself. So it's your body's way. There's like ancient wisdom in it of being able to like preserve yourself, right? But when you're trying to connect with someone, it's not really helpful. So dissociation is really, at least the way I see it, is you disconnecting from your nervous system, disconnecting from your body. And we can do that in small ways and big ways, right? People talk about like they used to talk about like dissociative fugues, where like people like walk around, and like then they'll like, it's almost like highway hypnosis, right? Like you'll be driving, and then you're like, well, how did I get home? I don't remember driving home, right? Like,
Mm.
how did I get here, right? That's like extreme dissociation. But then it can also be in small ways of daydreaming, or just having lots of thoughts living inside your head. I was listening to one of the podcasts that you had before, and I can't remember her name, and I apologize, but she was talking about like having sex or engaging with her partner, and like thinking about like the to-do lists, and like what, because she's, or like even thinking about like, oh, is he enjoying this, right? I think that in a way is dissociation, in a very mild way. It's like focusing and disconnecting from your own nervous system, from your body, um, and kind of going somewhere else. So that's kind of my explanation of dissociation. And once again, like it can be a beautiful and very helpful coping mechanism, but it can also be very destructive, because if you're walking around disconnected from yourself, you're not able to be mindful of how people interact with you. You're not going to be able to read people's cues, or your partner's cues, or your cues. You're not going to be actually in the present moment. You're not going to be able to kind of really be in the world. You're just kind of going around the world, from like a very cognitive lens. And we need our bodies to be able to like just be healthy, and because our bodies give us a lot of cues, and that really goes to pleasure or pain, whatever that is. And especially around sex, like I think like there's a lot. I'm shocked, and I think this is more of like a heterosexual thing with couples than, because gay men, like, we lead in with sex, right? It's like some of your penis, like, what do you want, like, what do you like, that's like the way that we operate. For, I think, heterosexual people, I think that comes a little bit later, and a lot of people are kind of in this bind of, I don't want to lose my partner if I share what I'm going to share. So like a lot of people, I'm so shocked at how many people don't have like heterosexual couples do not talk about sex as they like go through it. I'm like, you guys have never talked about like what you like and what you don't like in the bedroom. Like what, like I'm blown away. So gay men, like, I guess, like, good for us. Like we lead with that. So we're much more like sexually like we don't, we have that figured out before we kind of get into like more intimate relationships. But yeah, I lost my
Yes.
train.
No, that's okay. And you're absolutely right that in heterosexual relationships, many people don't have a conversation about sex. And oftentimes women assume that their partner knows what they are doing, number one, know how to
Mm-hmm.
pleasure us, number two, and know what we like, number three, which is all bullshit. You need to have a conversation about all of those things before you lay down and do anything with the person, because there's no way that you could the other person's going to possibly know how to read your mind to get all of that information, right? And so I always say that the gay community and the kink community do communication best, right? And the gay community, because the parts line up differently, must have conversations about sex, because who's going to do what? What do you like? What you don't like? And it's a very common thing to have that conversation. The kink community also does this very well too, and almost to an extreme where sometimes if you are going to, play with someone, quote unquote play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or have a quote unquote scene with someone, they will give you like a breakdown of like 5 pages of things that they want to know about you. And they will give you a form that you need to fill out and you need to sign. Okay. So communication is done very, very well in those communities, which I think is amazing. And I think that everybody can learn from these communities, especially the heterosexual communities out there that are assuming that their partners, ladies, listen up, know what they want. Okay. Because not every man is an expert in sex, right? And so you need to tell them and you need to teach them what works best for you. So we're not going to go into that conversation right now because I think that that is a whole nother animal, right?
Yeah. Can I say one more thing? Going back to like that mindfulness piece, and like mindfulness is like the opposite of dissociation, right? So like if you're struggling with dissociation, practicing mindfulness brings you back, but you have to be in your body and be connected to yourself to know what you like, right? So even people who have gone through trauma, sexual trauma, sometimes they don't know what they like because being kind of back into their body seems very threatening, whether that is like pleasuring themselves and masturbating, or whether that's like yoga. So I'm just kind of bringing it back to what we were talking about before, where um, I don't think people talk enough about how our bodies can feel so threatening when you've gone through trauma, and starting to practice mindfulness can really be destabilizing to some people. So if you relate to that, like, go see a therapist, go talk to someone like me, because we'll help you kind of navigate through that.
Yes. And I'm glad that you brought it back, right, to the dissociation, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about that as well. And you almost made me tear up earlier by, thanking me for sharing my story, because I do that very honestly on this show. And, it's not always easy for me to like just be open about my experiences, but I do feel like when people can hear me or maybe someone, a guest on my show, talk about their personal experiences and what they've gone through, it's relatable and people can see themselves in that situation and can see that there is hope and there is a potential for a better life and change, right? And so when we go back to dissociation, I want to just like jump back into that just for a minute, because
Mhm.
I described how dissociation worked for me when I was 5, right? But I can tell you right now that dissociation does not go away,
Mm.
right? The to-do list is, thinking about the to-do list is
Mhm.
dissociating, right? When you're trying to be in an intimate moment. So
Mhm.
for me, what dissociation looks like now is like if you turn the lights off, I'm dissociating because I can't see what's happening in the
Mm.
room. And
Mhm.
so suddenly my mind is on a million other things, right? But if
Mhm.
I do have the lights on, I can see my partner. I can see, I always have a mirror right by my bed. So I can see myself in the mirror and I can see us together and I can sort of bring myself back if it's happening to my body
Mhm.
in the moment. And so dissociation is a coping mechanism, um, and it can and will follow you throughout life. And how you deal with it is what we're talking about here, because it doesn't suddenly disappear when you're like, oh, I dissociate. Let me stop doing that. Do you want to
Mhm.
just talk about that a little bit and like
Yeah.
how we can healthily uh, use it to our advantage? Ladies, whether you are just starting your menopause journey or well into it and have questions about hormone replacement therapy, you're not alone. Many women experience vaginal dryness, decreased sensitivity, and urinary incontinence, like leaking when you sneeze, laugh, or exercise. These symptoms can be frustrating and limiting, but they are also very treatable. I experienced this myself and decided to try Parlor Game's topical estrogen and progesterone creams. Within 1 month of consistent use, my incontinence completely resolved. Topical estrogen helps restore tissue health, improve sensitivity, and support bladder control, while topical progesterone supports hormonal balance. If you are ready to stop suffering in silence, check the show notes for the link to Silky Peach, the topical estrogen cream, and Vibrant Third, the topical progesterone cream. I feel relieved and confident again, and I know you can too. If you've ever wished sex could feel more connected, more intense, or honestly just more fun, you need to check out Shameless Care. They're a telemedicine company built entirely around sexual health, real doctors, real prescriptions, and products that actually work. Like Shameless Chemistry, their oxytocin plus tadalafil blend that deepens connection and boosts arousal. Or Shamelessly Aroused, a topical cream with the active ingredient found in men's ED medication, increasing blood flow exactly where it counts. Every order includes a short video introduction from your doctor, transparent pricing, and no subscriptions ever. Just real, sex-positive healthcare that delivers results. Because you're a Please Me listener, you can use coupon code PLEASEME for $15 off your order of any product on the Shameless Care website. Use the code PLEASEME, that's PLEASEME, at checkout to claim your $15 off. Again, that's shamelesscare.com, code PLEASEME. Because great sex shouldn't be complicated. It should be shameless. This episode is sponsored by Shameless Care.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. 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 You give like this beautiful example because like our bodies are always trying to protect ourselves. And when we learn that something works, we keep going back to it, right? So whether that is people pleasing or dissociating or like being really like energized and like pushing our agenda, um, what works, we're going to keep kind of going back to. So um, when you talked about like that like to-do lists and coming back, that is the art of mindfulness, right? And that's something that I think pop culture psychology has done a disservice to mindfulness because everyone thinks like being zen and like sitting on a beach or a mountaintop and like, ooh, I feel like good. That's really like that can be mindfulness, but mindfulness is really just coming back to being present in the moment, without judgment. And you could be mindful when you're arguing with your partner. You could be mindful on a beach. Like it really doesn't matter. But really what happens is that our minds will go back to either a memory or a thought. And if it's not on the goal or it's not on like what we need to be kind of focusing on that moment, we need to like course correct and come back. So a lot of times when you are, it's honoring that part of your body that like learned to dissociate. Because like, once again, like that was a really creative skill. So it's being able to appreciate that and not villainize it or weaponize it or shame yourself for it. And then creating a healthy system within yourself to be able to be like, no, it's okay now. Come back to yourself. I'll be here to protect you. This is safe. But it's not going to be safe if you're beating yourself up, judging yourself, being self-critical. Like all the things that we may have learned to do that give us maybe some sense of safety, because that's really what like self-hatred is, right? Like if I'm really harsh and critical, then the outside world can't really hurt me. Or what if they do, then I'll be okay. Like whatever I'm going to say is, I'll say whatever more harsh things. So when someone says something harsh to me, then it'll like land easily or better.
Self-hatred. That's a big one. And I just think to myself, like, I feel like in my specific case, right, self-hatred has almost been, I don't know how to say this, but my inner child, right? So I've talked about and done a lot of inner child work in my life, but not until very recently, within the last year, I would say, did I ever really actually meet her. She was just a concept, like, oh yeah, there's an inner child in there somewhere, but like I just,
like Barb.
yeah,
Okay.
like I don't feel like connected to that part of me like at all, right? And I almost feel like when I think about my stuff, right? I feel like denying her and denying her emotions, denying her needs, etc., is almost a form of self-hatred. I don't know if I'm like making that up, or it feels like it goes together. And for me, like really connecting with my inner child was something that I purposely did some work around when I did my ayahuasca journey.
I did not know that about you. I love that.
Yes, I did. I recently, it was within the last year. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was connect with my inner child. And so that was sort of like my purpose in going into this journey. And when I was in the journey, I held her and I held her face. And I really connected with her in a way that I had never felt her before. And I think it's so important for people to understand that there is that vulnerable child inside of you that you need to protect and take care of. And it's not something that just like goes away as you become an adult, right? And so I would love to know your thoughts about what all of what I just said, because I just said a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, so go for it. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation so far. Since we did a deep dive, this episode will be released in 2 parts. Be on the lookout this Friday for part 2 with Josh Davis. Don't forget to download your free 30-day self-pleasure and body reconnection practices on pleaseme.online, a gift from me to you. And don't forget to vote for me for Best Educator for the ASN Awards. It's a one-time vote, and I truly appreciate your support. The link is in the show notes. Are you looking for a sexy date? Look no further than SDC.com. SDC.com is the premier ethically non-monogamous website that is worldwide. It also hosts a wealth of information on sexuality and sexual health, and I host a free live webinar monthly on the site. You can use code 37340 for a free trial membership on me, and be sure to reach out on the site and say hello. I want to personally invite you to join me on Patreon for ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and early releases. Already there is a lot of bonus content on there with many webinars that I've done in the past and a show that I've never released to the public before. My show is completely self-funded, And when you are able to support me in this way, I'm able to spread my message of body positivity, self-love, and women's empowerment, and empowerment in general around sexuality around the globe. And so with that being said, I appreciate everyone who has already joined Patreon. And if you've thought about joining, now's your nudge to do so.